Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you to this webcast this afternoon hosted by the National Dissemination Center for Career and Technical Education. My name is Donna Pearson. I am the Deputy Director for Professional Development at the National Research Center for Career and Technical Education. And I will serve as the facilitator for today's webcast. This is actually the third in a series of 3 webcasts having to do with the National Research Center's Math and CTE study. In December, Dr. James Stone presented the first webcast where he talked about the purpose of the study, the design of the research, and shared also some preliminary findings from the studies. In January, we invited in site facilitators from some of our replication sites to talk about the curriculum mapping and also the lesson development associated with the study. Today, our focus is on the professional development aspect of the study. And we feel that the professional development aspect of the study was really one of the central factors in the success of the outcome of the study. And so, without further ado, I would like to take a moment now to have our wonderful panel members introduce themselves. We have a cadre of researchers and teachers from Colorado who are here with us today. And so, Sherrie?
Thank you, Donna, and hello to everyone. I'm Sherrie Schneider, and I'm currently the Associate Vice President of Curriculum and Instruction for the Community College System, and I served as the co-coordinator of the Math and CTE Research Study in Colorado.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Harrison, and I'm currently a co-coordinator for the Math and Research Study, and as well as some other education projects that I'm working on. Previously to this position, I was working with Jefferson County Public Schools as the coordinator for career development and school to career.
Good afternoon. My name is Vicki Mivshek, and I teach business and marketing at Thompson Valley High School in Loveland, Colorado. And I've been a part of the experimental group for the past 2 years in the study.
Hi there. My name is Trevor Timmons, and I'm a math teacher, and I helped Vicki Mivshek. I was her math partner in the study. I also teach at Thompson Valley High School, and on the side of the math classes, I also teach some technology business classes.
Thank you one and all for being here today, and I need to mention here today that we really couldn't have done this study successfully without site facilitators and teachers like we have here today. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started here, I'm going to do a little bit of review to pull us back from what we learned in the first session and in the second session in our webcast. Then after that, we'll have Linda, Sherrie, and Vicki and Trevor share their experiences in Colorado. The focus of our webcast today, of course, is the professional development in the Math and CTE study. And what we'd really like to emphasize is that it was a process and a pedagogy that equaled the math achievement and the success of this study. One without the other just does not work. Just a reminder of the study question, and that is that we were testing the possibility that enhancing the math that's embedded in CTE courses would build the skills in this critical academic area without reducing the technical skill development of the students. And I thought it would be helpful to add a little slide that shows you the research design. Dr. Stone introduced this in December, but it's always helpful to take a look at it because this is truly a random controlled trial or an experimental research design that involves a group of experimental teachers and a group of control teachers. The experimental teachers were paired with math teacher partners, and they received professional development, the experimental treatment, if you will. So the experimental treatment in our design really consisted of 2 aspects. One was the professional development for the experimental CTE and math teacher teams, and then the actual teaching of the lessons in the classrooms. Before we get to the specifics of the Colorado professional development that our panel is going to share here today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the professional development happened consistently across the sites. First of all, when we started the study, we teamed our experimental CTE teachers with math teacher partners. And then all of these teams of CTE math teacher partners came together as a whole around content-specific professional development. We actually ran 5 replications through the year. And we ran the health occupations, business and marketing, automotive technology, information technology, and agricultural power and mechanics replications. These workshops were run consistently then across all of the sites, and we had 5 days of professional development in the summer, 2 in the fall, and 2 in the late winter or early spring. And between each one of these professional development workshops were regional math cluster meetings, and Sherrie and Linda will talk a little bit more about those. We also came together at the beginning of the study and developed universal agendas so that at each of our sites, as we were conducting the professional development, that we would have a consistency in the strategies we were using and the emphasis of those workshops. We also developed teacher handbooks to help the teachers know their roles and responsibilities. The outcome of this study was really something that we call the math and CTE model now. And again, emphasizing that this is really more than a set of lesson plans. This is an entire process, and this is a pedagogy that together equal math achievement. And from our study emerged some core principles that we really would like to share with you today as we begin. And that is, number 1, that we develop and sustain a community of practice. That's what really made this work. And you're going to hear echoes of this as you hear especially Trevor and Vicki talk about their experiences, that this community of practice that formed was very, very important to the success of the study. Important, and you may have heard this in the last broadcast in January, but we always begin with the CTE curriculum, not with the math curriculum. This is very important because we find the math embedded in the CTE curricula. Then we always approach the math as an essential workplace skill, and for kids, this means that they have math as yet another workplace tool to bring them success in the workplace. Fourth, we strive to maximize the math in the CTE curricula. You'll hear, again, a little bit more about this today. And that is that not only do we teach the math-enhanced lessons, but we strive to seek where else the math is in that course. And we look for those opportunities to improve the math as we go along through the school year. And finally, and very important, is that we recognize that CE teachers are not math teachers. They are teachers of math in CTE. So at this point, I would like to have Sherrie share her experiences in professional development in Colorado. Sherrie.
Thank you, Donna. In Colorado, we felt very privileged to be chosen to be one of the sites for this research study. I'd like to share with you the steps that we undertook to begin the professional development. The first thing we did was look at the promotion of the study and the selection of our teachers. The National Center paid a visit to Colorado in early fall of 2 years ago in 2003, and we promoted the study through a kickoff activity at Red Rocks Community College. We invited to the college CTE leaders from around the state CTE director, the program directors, the president of Red Rocks gave an opening session and welcome to everyone. We had local CTE administrators. We also had marketing and business teachers and a couple of high school principals. We selected the business and marketing program in Colorado because we happen to have more business and marketing programs than any other program area, and we felt this could have a major impact. After the initial kickoff, we asked teachers who were at the presentation that were interested in participating to complete a letter of intent with some information about themselves. Those were compiled and sent to the National Center. Each teacher received a letter of invitation asking them if they would be willing to and interested in participating, along with their principal and their CTE directors. The local CTE directors then contacted the teachers and asked them as well and provided the support necessary for the teachers to be released from class time to participate. Lastly, Linda and I did follow-up phone calls to ensure that we had a nice pool of teachers to participate in the study. The National Center actually selected through a random sample the teachers that were selected to participate in the professional development. Linda's going to talk a little bit more about the initial professional development.
The initial 5-day professional development, at the initial 5-day professional development, we established the teacher teams and then presented an overview of the study's goals and purpose. Next, we asked the teachers to complete a curriculum analysis, starting with a scope and sequence of their courses and the CTE concepts they plan to teach during the year. Next, we had them meet with their math teacher partner to identify the math that was embedded in the CTE concepts and create a curriculum map. Once the curriculum analysis process was completed, we provided the teachers with a template and asked them to create a lesson plan. Once that was completed, the teachers presented their lesson plans to the group for recommendations and revisions. At the end of the 5-day workshop, teachers were asked to complete and revise their lessons and be prepared to teach them at the next session. This is a picture of 3 of our teachers discussing the CTE and math concepts that they were going to be teaching throughout the year.
The next step in the professional development were the follow-up workshops that our teachers participated in. Following the initial professional development, the teachers went back to their classrooms and practiced their lessons and began to work with their math partners. We put together 2 follow-up workshops for our teachers, one in late fall, one in late spring, and then a celebration workshop in the summer. At the workshops, the teachers presented their lessons and they were critiqued by their colleagues. They were also videotaped, and the videotapes of the lessons, the teachers teaching their lessons, were put on the national website for other use and for a resource base for our teachers. Each teacher then worked with the math partner following the critiques of the lesson to revise their lessons and change their lessons accordingly, and then they were sent back to their classrooms in the ensuing period between the first follow-up workshop and the second one to teach these lessons. The importance of doing the follow-up workshops and the teachers revising their lessons were it was a very important process. The teachers needed to learn how to teach the math concepts within their embedded lessons and their enhanced lessons and to feel comfortable with that. And so we wanted all the teachers to receive feedback from their peers and to revise their lessons accordingly. This is a picture of one of our teachers teaching her lesson while she's being observed by her colleagues and being videotaped for the National Center.
One of the needs that came forward as we were working with our groups was a need for more math information, a resource to answer questions on the math concepts and how to teach those concepts. So math cluster meetings were established. These regional groups of math and CTE teachers met to discuss processes, to answer questions, and to learn from each other. The meetings were facilitated by math captains in each region, and teachers were encouraged to attend to get their questions answered and move forward. This picture shows a picture of our group in the math cluster meeting as they were meeting to discuss their lessons. And you can tell from the teachers' posture positions, they were very involved in the discussions and excited about the learning process.
Another important group that provided consistency for this research study were our liaisons. In Colorado, we selected 6 liaisons to work with us on this study. And the purpose of the liaisons were to go into the classrooms, to set up scheduled times, to work with the teachers, to do the student surveys, to do the student pre-testing and the post-testing. We chose our liaisons from a pool of retired CTE teachers that were interested in participating in the study, and they were assigned schools and school districts within the 15 school districts that participated in the study. The liaisons went through professional development just as the teachers did. Linda and myself coordinated the professional development, and we met with the liaisons on a regular basis to discuss their roles, their responsibilities with the teachers and for the students. We discussed the fact that they would be scheduling testing dates and survey dates, that they would be collecting testing data and returning it to us, that they would be working with alternative approaches in terms of working with students and working with different classrooms. And lastly, how to successfully work with our teachers. The liaisons became an essential and quality partner in our community of practice. They were an entirely important element within the study.
As Sherrie talked about the communities of practice, this was a major outcome of the study. And these community of practice were a result of the professional development and the meeting and the relationships that developed. In fact, today, if you were to talk to some of our teachers and some of our liaisons, they're still continuing the relationships they have and continuing to build on their skills. So the community of practice is an essential part of the study.
Our teachers became a bonded group throughout this entire process. It became more than a research study for them. It became a true professional development experience that continues. They're continually assisting other teachers. They're providing presentations at our state conferences, and they're just bonding together to continue the implementation of what was learned in the study.
Now we're going to hear from a couple of our teachers, some of the experiences that they had during the study.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we decided to participate in this study. There's a lot of reasons why we chose to do this. First of all, there is becoming more and more emphasis on high-stakes testing and standardized testing in the country, and Colorado is no different. So a lot of our state standardized tests evaluate our schools on their AYP goals. And a lot of focus is being taken away from CTE courses and into the core academic areas in order for schools to start making AYP goals. So the state of Colorado is no different. The state of Colorado is also increasing core graduation requirements, or is currently looking at that. Also, the Colorado Commission on Higher Education is increasing college admission requirements to include 4 units of math by 2010. And then finally, we wanted to show that our courses, or the CTE courses, do add value, and they do coordinate well and complement the academic core courses. And that was a key reason why I wanted to be part of this study as well. Trevor?
So once Vicki decided that she wanted to participate in this study, she had to find a partner, a math teacher, that could kind of help her out and figure out exactly what the math concepts were that she was already teaching in her business classes. And so she came to me, and we actually ended up being a natural fit because of my part-time business technology teaching. We already saw each other almost daily, at least 1 hour a day, and so we had some good overlap already before we started the study, and it really flowed into a really good partnership that we formed. The other reason that we decided to join this study was that we both had a common goal. Because of the high stakes testing and because of some of those increased core requirements that we're seeing, that the importance of math is out there, and we see that continuously all the time. Anytime you look at the news, it's math this and math that, and so we felt that it would be really important for us to jump in and work on this study together.
The training sessions, well, at first it was a little bit of a challenge, and that was primarily due to the fact that in Colorado we both have marketing programs and business programs. And there's just a variety of different courses that are taught in our state, from marketing to web design, computer applications, introduction to business, and the list goes on and on and on. And so it took us a little while to kind of negotiate amongst each other and determine what areas we wanted to focus on and what would be an easy fit for all of us to bring into our classes. Once we did focus on the math concepts that we wanted to use, it was a pretty easy fit. Like I said earlier, math is real important in all of our courses. We teach it daily, and it was just a matter of bringing that out a little bit more and embedding a few more concepts into our programs, which came to the next challenge at first was just coming up with the vocabulary that is being used both in the math curriculum and bringing that vocabulary into the business area and vice versa. For example, in business we use break-even analysis, and in math it's called intersection. And I'm going to let Trevor talk a little bit more about that challenge that we faced.
Actually, on the first day of our training session, day one of professional development, we were assigned to start beginning a curriculum mapping process and figure out exactly where the CTE teachers went with their courses so that we could begin to extract some math. And we found almost immediately it was pretty tough to work out exactly what was being taught, because most of the math teachers didn't really understand the CTE vocabulary, and the CTE teachers didn't really understand the math vocabulary. And so the break-even point is a really good example. Once a CTE teacher actually drew out a graph of a break-even point and how they teach it in class, a couple of the math teachers in the group all of a sudden had an aha moment, and we realized that that was just a simple intersection, and that was a concept that we teach and expect our students to know in math. And that kind of fired us up and kicked us off. Another really good example of vocabulary going back and forth that we also came across was a supply and demand curve, and that happens in economics, and then we saw it a lot in our business and marketing classes. And it really lent itself very well to a discussion of independent and dependent variables that also is something that we would do regularly in math, but it wasn't language that the CTE teachers were comfortable with. And so it was a really good forum during the professional development for us to come together and work on that. Another thing that really helped us out, at first, especially in Colorado with the business and marketing teachers, we felt like we had a really wide variety of classes that were being covered. It wasn't just one set curriculum. And so the teachers felt the need to create separate lesson plans. But once the business teachers and marketing teachers started sharing those plans, we realized there were 6 or 7 key concepts that everyone really kind of taught and relied on. And so it was really interesting to see different teachers' spins on that same concept and then bring it together. And we started finding that a bunch of the marketing teachers were using each other's lessons to really help improve them and bring out the math skills. Another thing that we've already mentioned are the math cluster meetings, and those were a smaller group, low-risk environment to help bring out more math and make it really comfortable for the CTE teacher to understand. That's one of the hardest things for a new teacher, or any teacher really, is to get up in front of a room and teach something they're not entirely comfortable with, especially if they're worried about having questions asked by a student. And so we met a couple times throughout the year, separate from the professional development sessions, just to talk to the CTE teachers and make sure that they were very clear on exactly what we were working on and answer any questions so that they would be comfortable when they got in front of their class. Now, if the partnership was strong in the first place and the math teacher and the CTE teacher already met regularly, the cluster probably wasn't necessary. But in a lot of cases, it helped to let everyone get together and kind of share experiences and best practices and move on from there.
Sherrie and Linda already discussed the community of practice, and I just wanted to add a little bit more regarding that area as well. In Colorado, we have a pretty good tight-knit marketing association, the Colorado Marketing Education Association, so a lot of us in the program knew each other as well before going in. So we already had a foundation where we felt comfortable amongst each other. We felt like we could visit one another's schools or discuss lesson plans pretty very, very comfortably. So there wasn't really any issues with us getting to know each other. It was very comfortable already. And we all were very familiar with the curriculum that's being taught in our state and with the standards. So that was another point right there that we already came in knowing ahead of time before we started into this program. What we've learned from it, well, after being in the program for 2 years, I can tell you right now that math can greatly enhance without detracting from the CTE element of the lessons. And what I mean by that is I was still able to get through all of the material that I needed to get through in the amount of time that I had for all my classes. It just gave me another approach to teaching it. And in some cases I focused more on the math issues than I had before, but I was still able to get through all of the curriculum that I needed to get through. The other thing that I noticed that was I was very happy to hear this with my students. Math seemed to be an area that a lot of them struggled with initially, and once they came into the classroom and we worked out the problems, we showed examples, and they could be successful in mathematics, and they could see the relevance and why it's important for them to learn mathematics and how they can use it on the job. So that right there was so valuable to me, to show that these kids can be successful in math when in some cases in their mathematics class they might have struggled a little bit more. It was a little bit more challenging.
The great thing about this study was that it wasn't only a winning situation for the CTE teachers, but the math teachers actually got to take something away from it too. Now that we're actually done with this study and not required to use enhanced math lessons, we still find ourselves using a lot of what we learned in this study because it has helped our classes, it's helped our students understand some more math. One of the first things, and it's a point I discussed earlier, is that common vocabulary is really important. And it's great help in the math classroom to be able to show students the relevance and answer that question that math teachers always get, why are we doing this? And if they can see a relevant example straight out of what they might be working on in a CTE classroom, then they're good to go. They can already understand that. The other thing is the lessons that we've already created that we had used last year, when those are an appropriate time or place in your curriculum to teach, they really seem to be a great help bringing out and enhancing that math and letting us just really bring the math classroom into the CTE classroom without that impact taking away the time from the actual CTE content.
I think another thing that I'd like to comment on is this type of study, or the method that it was used to conduct the study. I think it's something that could be used in other areas as well to bring more academic areas or core areas into the CTE classroom. It was a way for us to show that we are we do appreciate what's done in the academic area, and we complement those areas quite nicely. And I think there's more opportunities for something like this to go on further. Now what we'd like to do is show you some videos. I've got 3 video clips of practice lessons that I taught in one of our professional development workshops. The first one, I'm introducing the concept of budgeting, and this goes with an advertising budgeting lesson that I designed.
How many of you keep your own budget? Have you ever had a budget? Okay, a couple of you have. Good. How do you determine how much you're going to spend each month? What are some things that you look at to figure out how much you're going to spend? In the back. Okay, so you have some things that come up every month and you know exactly how much they are, so you plug those in. What about some other things? Some other costs? How much you're going to make? So what you've got coming in every month. It also helps you prepare that budget, right? Do you notice that some months you have more coming in or more going out than others? Okay, do you anticipate that down the road? I mean, can you kind of realize that before that month comes? Okay, you have kind of a contingency plan, so you have a little savings plan just in case, right, Ron? Okay, that's good. That's a good way to do it too. Well, if you're a business and you're trying to figure out how much you're going to spend every month on advertising, you probably want to have some kind of a fixed plan or a budget out there so you don't overspend or you don't underspend.
So after I introduced the concept of budgeting, I went into the three main methods of determining an advertising budget, which would be the affordable method, percentage of sales, and budget based on objectives. All three of these methods require students to work with percentages and percentage changes. So prior to me getting more in depth in this lesson, I wanted to do a review on how to do percentages. And this next clip leads my peers through how I would do that with my students.
What I would have my class do now is, just so we review percents, on the worksheet that I passed out, I would have them look at the first, second, third, and fourth, all the way down to the percent change problems, and I would give them a few minutes to work on that, and I'd be walking around the room to see if they had any questions, and then I would go back to the lecture because I'd want them to review that while it was fresh in their head, and then that way I can verify that they got it or didn't.
So once I checked for understanding on percentages, I moved into a more complicated problem, walking them through how to actually get to an advertising budget based on those three methods above. And the next clip will show you that I talked about how to look at next year's sales, past sales, expenses, and forecasting sales to come up with an advertising budget.
This is quite a complicated problem, and they're going to have to pull out the figures, and they're going to have to calculate some of these figures to plug into the formula, okay? So what I would do, I would use the board, and we would work together on figuring out the sales for this past year. And I've got it on a slide that I'll go to. So what I would do is first we do this year, for this year. We'd figure out the sales for the year, and I gave them that. So they just plug that in. And then the expenses, remember they were 37% of sales. So we have to calculate what the expenses would be based on that percentage. And I've got that figure there. Using the formula, I'd subtract it. I know how much they want to keep as profit. I gave them that figure as well. And then they'd have to subtract that out. And that's what they would have left to spend on advertising. Then what I want them to do next is forecast for the following year.
I hope these clips have given you some insight into the types of lessons we developed and how our professional development workshops were done throughout the past year and a half or two. It was real important to attend these, and I learned quite a bit from just watching my peers teach these lessons. It provided me with some new ideas on how to incorporate math into my programs, and they were all very well written lessons, and I used quite a bit of them, and I still use quite a bit of them. I'm going to pass it on to Trevor right now, and he's going to give you some more information on his involvement as a math teacher in this program.
Thanks, Vicki. You know, one of the primary purposes that math teachers were involved in this study wasn't to actually go into the classroom and teach the math, but was to help the CTE teacher understand the math that they would be teaching and to feel more comfortable with it. And one example of that is calculators. You know, in a math classroom today, calculators are abundant, they're everywhere, but they don't necessarily permeate the business classroom like that. And so a lot of the CTE teachers were uncomfortable with especially some of the newer calculators. So the following clip shows Nell Jarrett, a Colorado math teacher, demonstrating to the CTE teachers how to use a calculator.
And I'll kind of walk you through this so that you can see how you can make the graph on the calculator and find the break-even point just by using this. And so that would maybe be a good extension tool after you show them this method and go through it kind of the quick way or the long way by doing the formula. If you wanted to do this with, you know, maybe you have like 10 different products that you wanted to look at the break-even point for, then it would obviously be a lot faster to just use the calculator for it. But I would obviously show them the formulas first so that they understand how to do that. So, should I do this like as baby steps or? Okay. All right, go ahead and turn on the calculator by pushing the button in the lower left-hand corner. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, up underneath your screen, you have a button that says Y equals. It's clear over on the left-hand side. So go ahead and push the button that says Y equals. And what you should have is a screen, and up at the top of the screen it's going to say plot 1, plot 2, and plot 3. And then going down the sides you have Y1, Y2, all the way through Y7. Okay? This is where you're going to input your formula. And so you can put any formula you want to put in here. It needs to be in the Y equals mx plus b format. And so for this example, if we're going to use the jumbo pretzels again, the equation was $1.25x plus 30. And so all you need to put in is 1.25. And then the X key, you'll have a green alpha key. And right next to the alpha key is, it says XT, and then you've got the theta and the N, and that's your X button.
Nell continued her presentation by showing some of the more advanced features and functions that that particular calculator could perform. Then she really made a broad appeal to the CTE teachers to implement and use some of those strategies in their classrooms.
Kids to bring theirs in and kind of use them for something to actually use and have a purpose for using their graphing calculator. And to be completely honest, as a math teacher, to kind of plug the math department, we require, at my school, we do require our kids to get a graphing calculator. And so the more they're used in other classes, the better it is to kind of help encourage the kids to actually go out and get these calculators. And so, you know, if they're using them in science and then if they're using them in a business class too, then that's all the more motivation for them to go out and get the calculator that they're supposed to have. So. Any questions?
Well, thank you, Vicki and Trevor, for sharing your experiences in Colorado. And we thought it might broaden the webcast a little bit to share with you some clips from other sites concerning professional development. Some of you who viewed the January 13th webcast may have recalled watching Arnold Bourne from Oklahoma teaching a lesson on charting and interpreting data using decibel meter. So we have a little clip from that as he presented it to his peers in the professional development.
For example, we have the, first of all, let's look at this chart here for a second, or this graph. What are we looking at here? Can you all read that out there? What are we looking at?
Milk production of glass.
Milk production? Are we looking at milk production?
Yeah.
Oh, we're looking at the number of cows from 93 to 2002. And we started out with how many head? Approximately. What does it say, guys? 9,600,000.
Thank you for that clip. Arnold actually demonstrated this lesson as he would teach it in his actual classroom. And so the most engaging part of this activity at the professional development is when he gave decibel meters to his peers and sent them out to collect sounds on their own. Here we have the teachers who are walking outside the professional development workshop. They have their decibel meters, they're in pairs. They're going down the escalators, they're checking the sounds of the escalators. Typical average sounds in our daily lives, just as they would do with their students if they were teaching the lesson. They went through the halls, they slammed doors, they went outside and collected sounds off the street, including the sound of a bus. And when they were done, they came back into the professional development session and continued with the lesson, just as it would be taught in their courses. You can see here that they're charting. Okay. One of the other lessons presented in the January 13th webcast concerned estimating the percentage of body surface that can be burned. This lesson was called Alice's Areas. Here we see teachers in the professional development who are not teaching the lesson but are walking others through it.
Health concept could be, most people put it under first aid with burns. You could also plug it into the integumentary system for anatomy and physiology. The math concepts would be surface areas, percentages, and estimation. So part 2 was assess the students' math awareness as it relates to the CTE lesson. We just started out with asking, how do you find the surface area of a triangle? How do you find the surface area of a rectangle? How do you find the surface area of a sphere? How do you find the surface area of a cylinder? How do you calculate percentages? And then we put all the answers to those questions on the formulas. We have the definitions, area, surface area, sphere, cylinder, rectangle, percentage, pi, triangle, base, height, radius, and those are all on the PowerPoint. We break her body into different geometric shapes. Head is a sphere, arms and legs are cylinders, thorax is a rectangle, rectangular solid, and the perineal area is a triangle. Then we work through the PowerPoint as each area, they're given the dimensions, and then they're given the formula, and then they calculate that. And they go through the whole body, and then at the end, they add up all the parts, head, 2 arms, 2 legs, thorax, perineum. It gives the total, and then we have to find the percent of each part.
We would like to close our formal presentation out with the following video clip from one of our Automotive Technology math teacher partners. We felt that this clip was very compelling. We showed it in December at Dr. Stone's presentation, but we would like to show it here again because we think it really does size up the thoughts of the teachers who are involved in this study.
Love the fact that whenever we're writing lessons, we have time that's not interrupted by outside influences. We can just say, okay, we're going to write this lesson, and if it takes 2 hours, great. If it takes 4 hours, that's okay too, because we know what we want to get accomplished. We start it, and we just keep going until it's done. And it's been great to have that willingness of all the people. This was the first time that I think I've ever seen professional development done the right way. Oftentimes when you do professional development, there's this, okay, we're going to talk at you for 6 hours, we're going to hand you a bunch of handouts, now you go home and do all the real work. This was the first time that in 15 years that I've ever had someone say, okay, we're going to talk at you for a while, then you're going to work, you're going to come back, you're going to talk to each other. There was really enough time to really create a lesson from beginning to end, and then try it out, fix it if we needed to, move on to a different lesson, and so on and so forth. It was fabulous.
Well, we know that Renee's thoughts are shared by many math teachers and CTE teachers that participated in the study. We know that from our focus groups and our surveys. So at this point in our webcast now, we're going to turn to some questions that have come from our viewing audience. And I'd like to direct this first question to Linda and Sherrie. What was the main challenge you encountered in providing the professional development for the teachers?
I can start with that. We typically didn't have a challenge with the facility. I was employed at Red Rocks at the time, and so we had access to the college and the IT support and had the technicians to do the videotaping and that sort of thing. I think the major challenge was understanding how to develop the connectivity between the vocabulary, the CTE vocabulary and the math vocabulary. And we tried to do that as diligently as we could in everything we did, from the curriculum mapping to the lesson planning. But what we didn't account for were things that happened in an ancillary fashion, such as a fire drill that had us exiting the building in the middle of the professional development. And several of us got locked out of the building on the way back. But you know, you put things like that in perspective and say, in a typical classroom, things like that do happen. And overall, the professional development wasn't as much of a challenge as one might imagine. And
I think the key problem that we had was understanding teacher schedules. There was a perception that all high schools meet from 9 to 3 and all teachers are available after 3. We had 17 school districts across Colorado. We covered the whole state. So we found that in order for us to work with the teachers, we needed to plan our meetings for Friday afternoon and all day Saturday. We had several teachers that had to drive in and stay at hotels in order to attend the professional development. And that whole scheduling around their requirements was difficult. But our teachers really met the challenge and worked with us, driving and staying in snowstorms when it was really scary and everybody wanted to go home.
Thank you. This next question is directed toward Vicki and Trevor. What was not included in the professional development that you think should have been included?
Maybe some more like a they did provide us with a template, but maybe some more suggestions on the different types of math concepts we can bring in, or some examples. It took us a while to kind of get to the point where we thought, well, this would fit here and this would fit there, but you know, overall it wasn't too much of a challenge. I mean, we were able to figure most of it out and worked well together. Just time is also an issue too. It's just finding the time to work with each other. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I think at the very beginning, the first couple days of the professional development, in the first year of the study, we didn't have a 100% clear view of where we were going. The 7-step process wasn't very complete yet, that we were supposed to apply that template to our lesson plans. And so it was a little bit hard at the beginning to kind of feel out exactly where we were going, but we did have some really good direction, and all of the teachers that were working in the study were really great, and that kind of all pulled together as some great teamwork. And you know, I think that really plays right back into that community practice and getting everyone together to really help out, and we really got right in line and started going for it.
Okay, thank you. Question for you, Vicki. After teaching CTE business with integrated math, say for 2 or 3 years, do you feel that a business teacher could look at integrating another academic area?
Oh, absolutely. I think that is kind of what I alluded to earlier, that this type of program or study lends itself to other ones down the road. I think you could bring in social studies quite easily, language arts as well. So I think you could team up with those teachers and integrate their programs or their curricula into yours. Easy fit. I think that's something that could definitely be done down the road.
And Trevor, final question for you. How would you describe the impact that this study had on you as a math teacher?
I think the impact of this study has been huge. One of the things I alluded to earlier was the question that we get a lot from the students, especially in math classes, is what are we doing? Why are we learning this? This doesn't make any sense. And we're answering that question, and for students to be able to go to a CTE class and really finally make that connection, and I know Vicki saw this all the time, the students going, oh, I just did this in math, and they'd finally make that connection. They had always been doing that same math, but we hadn't taught it in the same manner, and so it had different vocabulary, and it was always kind of disguised, and so this really bridged the gap. So when we can bring that back together, now I can even go in my math classroom and make some topics more relevant after seeing how that applied in the CTE classroom. And so this really goes both ways, and it's been a really great, exciting thing to do. And we actually probably left this study with more energy than we came into it, because now we really feel like we have some tools.
I think we all felt that way to some degree. Sherrie and Linda, this is for either of you to answer. Were there any challenges with the teacher pairs that were not in the same building, the CTE math teacher partners?
There were some challenges with that situation. We had several teachers who were not in the same building, and in order for them to get together on a regular basis, they were very creative. They interfaced via email, they met on Saturdays, they met for lunch, they corresponded in a variety of different ways, but the essential factor was that they cared enough to get together and work on this. We had extremely wonderful math teachers and CTE teachers that were dedicated to the study, and they made every effort to get together. And Linda and myself often facilitated some of those meetings, so it was truly amazing to see them come together.
I also want to comment that one of the things we had was support from our CTE directors. So if we had teachers in 2 different buildings, our CTE director would give one of those teachers, or the math teacher, a sub-day to go over and spend the day working with the CTE teacher. And that was an incredible opportunity for the teachers and very supportive from our directors.
Okay. We have another question for Vicki and Trevor. Did you do much with problem solving? And the person also is interested in knowing if there were any engineering type concepts that were involved in yours.
You're probably better off at answering.
We really didn't have many engineering concepts. Most of it was specifically in Colorado geared towards that business and marketing, and I can't speak for the other states, although all those CTE areas were covered. In terms of actual formal problem solving, we didn't get into it very far, at least in our partner couple. But the whole process, this whole 7-step pedagogy that we've gone into and that we used during the study really lends itself to be able to bring problem solving in and be able to explore that also.
And we have yet another question for the two of you. Did you feel that you were making decisions about what you were teaching, or was that imposed by the research study?
No, I felt that all the lessons that we chose to teach were our lessons, that at no point in time we were told to teach X, Y, and Z or that particular lesson. It was what I felt comfortable doing. We were given that flexibility and freedom to decide what best fit with our current curriculum, with our classes, with our personalities, and with our background. So I did not feel at all that we were told what to teach. We did our own thing.
And the flexibility actually made it almost harder to choose, especially at the beginning, because we had such a wide range of topics, especially that we could put math into, or extract the math from, I should say. So it almost made it more difficult at the beginning to decide exactly what we wanted to do with our math-enhanced lessons.
And before we close, today I'd like to ask our panelists if they have any final comments they would like to make to the audience.
I think when we began this study, we were charting a new course and charting a course through a proven curriculum with dedicated teachers and solid programs. And as we charted the course and went on the journey, we learned a lot along the way. I think the thing that I'll take from the study is truly how our teachers bonded. They rose to the challenge. They integrated a different concept into their teaching. They learned how to teach differently. They learned to pair with one another. And at the end, when we had our celebration in June, it was a statewide celebration for our research participants. It was a wonderful, wonderful day to have them speak to how much they learned, how much it impacted their teaching, and how much it's impacted their student outcomes. So in my estimation, the research study has done a profound service to the teachers of Colorado.
I'd just like to thank the National Center for the opportunities that this research study has provided. I taught marketing education for about 10 years, and we were always encouraged to include academics in our curriculum and to do a pre and post assessment to show that we had academics in our curriculum. And we had standards, we had competencies, but we didn't have the tools to really connect the integration, the academic integration into our curriculum. And this study has provided those tools. So I really thank them for the opportunities they provided and the resources they provided for our teachers.
I've been very pleased with what it's given me in return. I feel like I've given so little of my time and my effort, and I've gotten so much in return from it. It's given me an opportunity to meet my students' needs more so than I ever thought I could right now. It's also given me the opportunity to see my peers teach lessons and develop new lessons that I can bring into my own classroom and get my kids excited about math, get them excited about the relevancy that we teach in our classes. And it's given me a chance to bond with other teachers that I probably wouldn't otherwise be able to spend a lot of time with because of the different curriculum that we teach.
And I think we're at such a almost frightening time with the emphasis on core areas starting to really take over. We're hearing of districts that are requiring 2 or even more hours of math a day for some of their students. And when you start figuring out that someone that takes a couple hours of math and a couple hours of language arts, the electives are falling by the wayside. And I think this study has shown us that we can keep the electives and actually improve on the math at the same time and really allow students to do something that they're interested in and hopefully follow a career path that they really want to be involved in, instead of driving them away from, some of the education. So I think this study has opened some really exciting doors that we're going to be able to follow and see where they go.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our sincerest thank you for serving on this panel today. But more than that, for serving in this study in an invaluable way. We just literally couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so very much. And this concludes our broadcast for today. Thank you for joining us. Our next webcast is scheduled for March 6th, regular time, 3 p.m. The presentation will be called Achieving the Dream, Improving Community College Student Achievement. Margaret Rivera from the American Association of Community Colleges will be here with a panel of educators and researchers. Thank you.